Most people think their pain comes from the world. But according to David R. Hawkins, the real suffering comes from what you refuse to let go of. The anger, the fear, the rejection, the memories replaying in your head every night. What if the emotions controlling your life could disappear without years of struggle? Letting go reveals a simple idea that has transformed millions of lives, and once you hear it, you may never see your emotions the same way again.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to Book Podcast Zone. Today, we are undertaking just a truly massive exploration of, human emotion and our internal architecture. I mean, we've got a huge stack of notes in front of us.
Yeah, quite a stack.
Right. And we're working directly from this comprehensive 12-part breakdown of a guide called The Inner Freedom Journey, a guide to letting go.
Which is just, it's a brilliant text.
It really is. It's this profound, meticulously detailed exploration based on the groundbreaking psychological and spiritual work of David R. Hawkins. And we're also going to be, heavily utilizing the insights of two original guides and instructors from the source text, Alex and Mia.
Yeah, their practical application is just so key here.
Exactly. Because our absolute mission today is to take this theoretical map and, turn it into a highly practical, somatic, step-by-step roadmap for you.
For the listener.
Yeah, targeting this specifically at those of you who are, high-achieving, driven, successful on paper, but who still find yourselves emotionally stuck.
Because it's so common, right? You might be running on this invisible, totally exhausting treadmill of chronic stress.
Oh, yeah, like low-grade frustration or anxiety.
Exactly. And you just cannot figure out why your external success hasn't translated into internal peace.
And that invisible treadmill is exactly what we're going to dismantle today.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it. Starting with the very foundation of this entire framework, right? Which our sources define as the call to freedom and the hidden mechanism of release.
Yeah, the first two chapters from Alex and Mia, they point out something deeply counterintuitive right off the bat.
Which is?
Well, they argue that our traditional, culturally approved coping mechanisms, the things every single one of us naturally does when we feel bad, they actually backfire.
You completely backfire.
Right. They identify three main culprits here: suppressing our feelings, expressing them explosively, or endlessly analyzing them.
Which is literally what everyone does. I mean, what else is there?
Right, but the text argues that all three of these strategies actually create more resistance in the body and mind. The revolutionary idea here is that true freedom isn't about fighting the feeling, it's about surrendering it.
But, to the logical mind, and especially to the ambitious mind, that word surrender. I mean, it sounds identical to giving up.
Oh, it absolutely sounds like waving a white flag, which is exactly why it is so heavily resisted by high achievers.
Yeah, nobody wants to just give up.
But in this specific psychological context, surrender is actually the ultimate act of empowerment. What's fascinating here is the underlying neurological and somatic mechanics of what happens when we resist an emotion.
Right, because it's physical. It's not just in your head.
Exactly. When a negative emotion arises, let's say a spike of anxiety, it's accompanied by a very real physiological response. Cortisol, adrenaline, a tightening of the chest, shallow breathing.
Our heart starts pounding.
Right. And our immediate instinct is to push it away. We grit our teeth and suppress it. Or we vent it out onto someone else, which is expression.
Or we try to outsmart it, right?
Yeah.
We analyze it to death.
Exactly. But all three of those strategies require an enormous amount of continuous psychological and biological energy. They actually keep the nervous system locked in a state of sympathetic arousal.
They trap the emotion.
Yes, they keep the emotion trapped in your body as stored kinetic energy. The surrender technique that Alex and Mia describe is the exact opposite.
So what does that actually look like?
It is the deliberate, conscious act of just letting the physical feeling exist. You drop the mental resistance. You don't try to change the tightening in your chest.
Don't judge it as bad.
Right. And you don't try to fix it. You simply observe the energy of the emotion and let it run its biological course until it naturally dissipates.
Okay, it makes me think of an analogy. Like, suppressing your emotions is basically like trying to hold a giant, overinflated beach ball underwater in a swimming pool.
Oh, that's a great visual.
Right. Because you can do it for a while, sure. You could use all your core strength and body weight to keep that thing submerged. But it takes immense, exhausting, continuous physical effort.
Your arms start shaking.
Exactly. Your arms are shaking. You have to constantly monitor it. And you can't really enjoy the pool. And the second you lose your grip or you just get too tired to hold it down anymore, what happens?
It pops up.
violently pops up out of the water, usually smacking you right in the face. Surrendering, in this context, is just taking your hands off the ball, letting it pop up, float on the surface, and eventually the wind just blows it to the other side of the pool.
I love the beach ball analogy. But, if we really look at the psychological toll, I would take it a step further.
Okay, where does it go?
It is not just that your arms get tired from holding the ball underwater. It is that you cannot use your hands for literally anything else in your life while you are holding it down.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're totally occupied.
Right. Your creative energy, your problem-solving capacity, your ability to just be present in a conversation, all of that cognitive bandwidth is secretly being hijacked to keep that ball submerged.
Just to keep it hidden.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is what we call allostatic load in biology. It's the hidden wear and tear on the body from chronic stress. Taking your hands off the ball gives you your hands back.
Wait, hold on. I have to interrupt here because I can hear the objection forming in our listeners' minds right now.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because the sources say that analyzing our emotions backfires. But, I mean, if I don't analyze my feelings and try to figure out why I'm upset, how am I supposed to ever learn from my mistakes?
Ah, yes.
Right? Don't we need to understand the root psychological cause of our pain, like our childhood patterns or our triggers, so we don't repeat them? It feels almost irresponsible to just drop it.
It is a brilliant objection, and honestly, it is the absolute #1 hurdle for highly educated, analytical people approaching this work.
Because we're taught to analyze everything.
Exactly. But here is the crucial distinction the text makes. Analyzing an emotion while your nervous system is still deeply triggered by it is actually a trap. It becomes a form of intellectual resistance.
Intellectual resistance. I like that.
Yeah, because when you are highly emotional, your prefrontal cortex, which is the logical part of your brain, is basically impaired. And your default mode network is just spinning in these ruminative loops.
So you're not actually thinking clearly.
Not at all. You are using your mind to try and escape the severe discomfort in your body. You spin a story. My boss said this because he doesn't respect me, and I reacted this way because of my father, and if I don't figure this out, my career is over.
We've all been there.
Right. But that story actually acts as fuel. It feeds the emotion and keeps the physiological alarm bells ringing.
So surrender isn't ignoring the lesson.
No, not at all. Surrender does not mean you throw away the lesson. It means you remove the intense, blinding emotional charge first. You sit with the physical knot in your stomach until it dissolves.
Once the beach ball isn't fighting you anymore, your mind clears.
Exactly. The lesson, or the necessary boundary you need to set, actually becomes incredibly obvious because you are finally looking at the situation with a calm, regulated nervous system, rather than through this distorted, muddy lens of a triggered threat response.
That makes perfect sense. Let's put this right into the real world.
Let's do it.
Imagine a high-pressure corporate environment. Picture a massive make-or-break corporate merger meeting happening right now in downtown Chicago.
High stakes.
Exactly. You have a senior executive sitting at the conference table, and they are experiencing an intense, suffocating spike of stress.
Very common.
If they use the traditional methods, they might suppress it. They grip their expensive pen tighter, they force a fake smile, they completely ignore the nauseating knot in their stomach.
Or they overanalyze it.
Right. They might sit there analyzing it to death while the lawyers are talking, thinking, if I don't close this deal, the quarterly earnings will miss targets, the board will be furious, my entire identity as a successful person is in jeopardy.
And they think they're problem solving.
But actually, they are just physically suffering, and their cognitive flexibility is dropping by the second. Now, if they applied this surrender technique in real time, right there at the table, it would look completely invisible from the outside.
Because it's all internal.
Exactly. They wouldn't fight the knot in their stomach. They would consciously drop the mental story about the quarterly earnings. They would just shift their attention to the raw, physical sensation of the tension in their gut, allowing it to be there without trying to push it away.
And what happens?
Within moments, by removing the resistance, the kinetic energy of that specific stress spike begins to metabolize and dissolve. Their breathing naturally slows down. They return to equilibrium, leaving them incredibly clear-headed, sharp, and genuinely ready to negotiate the actual terms of the deal.
Precisely. They stop fighting the internal biological feeling of stress, which paradoxically sends a safety signal to the brain, allowing the stress to actually leave the body.
It's so simple but so powerful.
It really is. It's a subtle, almost microscopic shift in internal attention, but it has a profound impact on how we operate moment to moment.
It really changes everything about how we interface with adversity. Please like, subscribe, and share for more updates as we continue to the next chapter.
As we transition into the next phase of the guide, we move from how the mechanism of release works to exactly what it is we are releasing.
Because it's not just random thoughts.
Right. Alex and Mia introduce a concept that serves as the architectural foundation for this entire journey: the map of consciousness. This isn't just a metaphor, it is a detailed anatomical map of human emotion.
Right. The fundamental idea here is that feelings are not just random, fleeting psychological events. They carry actual energy or physiological weight.
Yes, very real weight.
And more importantly, the text argues that it is our deep reservoir of unacknowledged, suppressed feelings that are silently running our entire lives from the background, dictating our thoughts and behaviors without our conscious permission.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the map of consciousness categorizes human emotion on a literal scale of energy and frequency.
How does the scale work?
Well, at the very bottom of the map, you find the heaviest, most contractive, and biologically draining emotions: apathy, guilt, shame, and deep grief.
The really heavy stuff.
Yeah. Then, moving up into the middle of the scale, you hit the highly active but still chaotic and destructive emotions: fear, desire, anger, and pride.
Okay, so a lot of kinetic energy there, but not peaceful.
Exactly. And as you cross into the upper echelons of the map, you enter the lightest, most expansive, and life-enhancing states: courage, acceptance, peace, and ultimately love.
That makes sense.
But what is absolutely crucial for you to understand here is the concept of your emotional set point. This is the baseline emotional frequency that your nervous system naturally defaults to when absolutely nothing in particular is happening in your life.
I find the concept of an emotional set point deeply fascinating. I compare it to a home's internal thermostat in the dead of winter.
Oh, I like that.
Right. If your internal subconscious thermostat is set to the frequency of, say, anxiety,
Yeah.
it truly does not matter what is happening outside in the external world.
The environment doesn't matter.
Not at all. Your internal furnace is going to keep kicking on, working overtime to maintain that exact temperature of anxiety in your body.
It seeks homeostasis.
Yeah. You could literally be sitting on a pristine, quiet beach in Hawaii on a fully paid vacation. But because your biological set point is anxiety, your brain will actively scan the environment and search for something to worry about just to maintain that familiar baseline.
It has to justify the feeling.
Exactly. Your brain will say, did I leave the stove on back home? Is my flight going to be delayed in 5 days? Did I forget to send that email? The brain effortlessly invents the justification for the emotion, but the emotion was already there in the background driving the bus the whole time.
That is exactly how the neurological mechanism of interoception works. The feeling precedes the thought.
Wait, say that again. The feeling comes first.
Yes. We go through life believing that we have thousands of different independent anxious thoughts causing our stress. But according to Hawkins' framework, we actually just have a massive suppressed reservoir of raw anxiety.
And that pool of anxiety is generating the thoughts.
Exactly. That outerlying anxiety is actively generating thousands of thoughts to justify its own existence. The thoughts are just the exhaust fumes of the suppressed emotion.
Exhaust fumes. That is such a wild way to look at it.
It changes everything. Moving up the map of consciousness isn't about becoming a quote-unquote better person in some moralistic, judgmental sense. It is strictly about dropping the heavy, exhausting baggage that drains your biological vitality.
So you just let out a little bit at a time.
Right. As you use the surrender technique daily, releasing a little bit of frustration at the grocery store, a little bit of worry before a meeting, you are gradually, permanently raising that internal thermostat.
Let's bring this down to earth with a scenario millions of people deal with. Picture someone commuting daily on the notorious 405 freeway in Los Angeles.
Oh, brutal. The worst traffic.
It is brutal, gridlock, it is hot, it is objectively unpleasant. If that commuter's emotional set point is already humming at the frequency of anger or frustration, maybe from years of unreleased stress, every single minor delay on that freeway validates and fuels that heavy energy.
They're looking for a reason to be mad.
Exactly. Someone merges slightly too close, and the commuter interprets it as a deliberate personal attack. A red light is viewed as a cosmic injustice. Because their thermostat is set to anger, their brain literally searches the highway for targets to project that anger onto.
And by the time they get to work,
Their day is completely ruined. By the time they finally pull into the parking garage, their cortisol is sky high, their heart is racing, and they haven't even opened a single email or spoken to a colleague yet.
right, but what if their set point is different?
Contrast that with someone whose set point is higher up the map, say at acceptance. They're sitting in the exact same traffic. The objective reality of the 405 has not changed, but their internal experience is completely different.
They're not fighting it?
Right. They aren't generating resistance. They listen to a podcast, they observe the traffic, and they simply accept the reality of the road. Their energy isn't drained by a futile fight against reality.
And that contrast right there is the ultimate proof that the external world is not causing our suffering. The internal set point is dictating our reaction to the world.
We just blame the traffic.
We think the traffic makes us angry, but really, our suppressed anger uses the traffic as an excuse to vent itself. It is a complete and total paradigm shift in how we view responsibility for our own well-being.
It is incredibly empowering because the moment you realize you control the thermostat, you stop waiting for the weather outside to change. Please like, subscribe, and share for more updates as we continue to the next chapter.
Now we have to look closely at the lowest, heaviest points on this entire map. The guides take us deep into what they call rock bottom, the emotional states of apathy, guilt, and depression.
This is undoubtedly heavy territory, but it is so deeply important because so many people get trapped here.
So many.
Alex and Mia describe this zone as the I can't feeling. It is a state of immense, heavy, almost physical resistance that keeps people entirely stuck and paralyzed in their lives.
Completely paralyzed.
They emphasize over and over that gentle self-forgiveness is the absolute first and most crucial step to moving upward from this dark place. But it brings up a very practical question for me.
Okay, what is it?
How can someone differentiate between genuine physiological exhaustion, like clinical burnout from working 80-hour weeks for a year, and this emotional state of apathy? Because from the outside, they look virtually identical.
They really do.
You see people just checking out, staying in bed, scrolling on their phones endlessly, seemingly unable to move forward. So how do we tell the difference?
It is a vital distinction, especially in our modern culture of overwork. Burnout and apathy might share the exact same physical posture, lying on the couch, unable to move, but their energetic and neurological signatures are completely different. Burnout usually stems from an extended period of operating in sympathetic overdrive. The person was trying too hard. They were operating in the high-frequency states of desire or fear, running constantly on the treadmill of, I have to achieve this quota, I have to save this failing project, I have to keep the family together.
Just nonstop output.
Exactly. Eventually, their physical adrenal batteries simply drains. The body forces a shutdown to recover. Apathy, on the other hand, is not primarily a lack of physical energy. It is the complete and total collapse of willingness.
Collapse of willingness.
Yes. It correlates with the dorsal vagal shutdown in the nervous system, which is the ancient freeze response. It is a profound psychological defense mechanism against feeling any more pain.
So the body just says, no more.
The subconscious mind essentially calculates, trying hurts, hoping hurts, failing hurts, so I will simply decide that I can't do anything at all. It is a heavy, frozen state characterized by deep self-condemnation, hopelessness, and the absolute belief that no action will make a difference.
Wow. The complete collapse of willingness. That is a haunting but perfectly accurate way to describe it.
It's very real for a lot of people.
Let's ground this in a real complex U.S. example. Let's look at the massive economic shifts we've seen over the last few decades in the Rust Belt towns across the Midwest.
Oh, that's a perfect example.
Imagine a highly skilled, proud factory worker who has just been laid off because the plant that employed his family for 3 generations closed down. Initially, there might be a spike of anger or fear.
Of course, the shock of it.
But over time, as months turn into a year and no equivalent jobs appear in the town, those active emotions can curdle and solidify into deep, paralyzing apathy and guilt. The crushing guilt of feeling like a failure, of believing they can't provide for their family anymore.
It's the I can't energy taking over.
Exactly. That specific I can't energy becomes a heavy physical blanket. It literally paralyzes their cognitive ability to even look for new, different opportunities, maybe in a completely different industry or by retraining. They are entirely stuck in the internal narrative that they are obsolete.
It's a tragic cycle.
And the source text makes a brilliant point here. In this frozen state, telling someone to just think positive or hustle harder is completely useless.
It's worse than useless, it's alienating.
Right. The energetic jump is too high. The first step out of that frozen state isn't massive action or forced joy. It is self-forgiveness. It is the gentle release of the guilt of being stuck in the first place.
Exactly. When you are operating in the deep freeze of apathy, you cannot jump straight to joy. It is neurologically impossible. But you can jump to grief or even to anger.
Wait, moving to anger is a good thing.
Yes, anger actually has significantly more life force energy than apathy. The guides point out that by gently forgiving yourself for feeling terrible and validating your own pain without judgment, you begin to thaw the ice.
That makes a lot of sense.
It allows a tiny bit of movement in the somatic emotional body. You might finally cry, which moves you up into grief, or you might finally get mad at the situation, which moves you into anger. And while those still feel bad, they are massive steps up the ladder toward freedom.
And realizing that even that tiny, painful movement is actually a huge victory is so important for anyone in that state. Please like, subscribe, and share for more updates as we continue to the next chapter.
As we follow the map slightly upward, we transition from the completely frozen state of apathy into the slightly more active but still profoundly painful territory of grief, sadness, and loss.
This is where Mia, one of the original guides, shares some incredibly deep insights. She talks about how when a major loss hits us hard, our immediate biological instinct is to push the sadness away because the intensity of the pain feels like it might literally destroy us.
It feels like an existential threat.
It does. But the mechanism she reveals is that suppressing sadness actually traps that dense energy in the physical body, leading to chronic physical ailments and deeply negatively impacts our future relationship.
Because it just sits there.
Right. The core practice here is learning how to allow the sadness to simply move through your body without letting it consume your entire identity.
This is so critical to discuss because our modern society profoundly misunderstands and pathologizes grief. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, lay it on us.
We have an immense collective cultural discomfort with sadness. We are conditioned from a very young age to get over it, be strong, look on the bright side, or get back to work as quickly as possible.
We don't want to see people cry.
Exactly. When people experience a devastating loss, the well-meaning people around them often try to distract them or cheer them up. What this effectively does is force the grieving person to swallow the raw, agonizing energy of the sadness.
They just push it down.
And as Mia points out, swallowed grief does not vanish. It sets up camp in the tissues of the body, creating chronic physical tension, inflammation, and immune issues.
So it literally makes you sick.
Yes, literally. And psychologically, it places a subtle, invisible wall around the heart, making the person deeply afraid to connect, love, or trust fully in the future because their subconscious mind is terrified of ever feeling that level of unprocessed pain again.
I find this dynamic so visually clear. I liken a profound grief to a severe, catastrophic weather system passing over a house. A massive thunderstorm or a blinding blizzard.
A force of nature.
Exactly. You cannot step outside onto your front lawn and physically fight the storm. You cannot yell at the dark clouds to stop raining or punch the wind.
You look ridiculous trying.
You just have to sit inside your house, feel the walls physically shake, listen to the terrifying howling of the wind, and trust that weather, by its very nature, is temporary. It will eventually pass.
If you wait it out.
But if you pretend the storm isn't happening, or you foolishly try to run outside and push the hurricane away, you are going to get destroyed. Allowing sadness is exactly like sitting safely inside the house. You let the tears come. You let the waves of deep sorrow wash over your body.
Without fighting it.
Right. You don't label it as a malfunction, you don't fight it, and you don't try to analyze why the storm is there. You just ride out the somatic experience.
And by riding it out without generating resistance, the raw energy of the grief is actually processed by the nervous system and systematically released.
The body knows what to do.
It really does. The act of weeping actually releases endogenous opioids and oxytocin, which naturally soothe the body. The storm passes much faster and leaves much less damage when you don't fight the rain.
Let's picture a family living in a beautiful, multi-generational home on the coast of Florida. A massive Category 5 hurricane comes through and completely destroys the property.
A total loss.
The physical loss is absolutely devastating. The family history, the childhood memories measured on the door frames, the physical security, all swept away into the ocean. The immediate instinct, especially for the parents who are desperately trying to protect their children from further trauma, might be to immediately put on a rigid, brave
To
face.
just go into logistics mode.
Right. To say, it's just stuff, we're alive, let's get straight to the insurance claims and start rebuilding. But if they do not allow themselves the time to sit in the literal and figurative rubble and actually weep, to fully physically process the raw, heavy grief of what was violently taken from them, that suppressed emotion will haunt the entire rebuilding process.
It will definitely show up later.
It will inevitably show up months later as chronic exhaustion, snapping viciously at each other over minor decisions, or developing severe anxiety about the weather. Allowing the raw grief to process naturally is not a sign of emotional weakness. It is the essential biological and psychological requirement for true recovery.
It is the only way to genuinely clear the internal space for a new beginning, rather than unconsciously dragging the heavy ghost of the old, destroyed house into the brand new one.
That is such a vivid way to capture the cost of holding on. Please like, subscribe, and share for more updates as we continue to the next chapter.
Moving onward, the energetic frequency shifts dramatically again as we step up from the heaviness of grief into the highly agitated realm of fear, anxiety, worry, and phobias.
Fear is such a wildly tricky emotion because, as Alex and Mia analyze so well, fear constantly masquerades as protection.
Oh, it's the ultimate trickster.
It completely convinces our logical minds that worrying is actually keeping us safe. We honestly believe that if we can just anticipate every single possible worst-case scenario, we can control the outcome of the future.
Which is impossible.
But in reality, it just keeps us exhausted and playing incredibly small. The guides introduce a profound somatic exercise called owning the shadow, which is about stopping the endless, exhausting running from fear and instead turning around to face it, to feel it, and to move right through the center of it.
This raises an important question, though. Why is our fear response so wildly out of proportion to the actual realities of our modern lives?
Yeah, why do we freak out over an email?
Exactly. The evolutionary origin of fear was literal physical survival. If a saber-toothed tiger is chasing you through the brush, the intense surge of adrenaline, the tunnel vision, the shutting down of digestion, the urge to run, that is perfect, flawless, life-saving biology.
That makes total sense.
But our modern brains have not updated their software to differentiate between a physical apex predator and a slightly passive-aggressive email from our boss. We apply life-or-death physiological anxiety to incredibly mundane social situations.
It's a glitch in the system.
The brain interprets a potential social rejection, like making a mistake in a meeting, as equivalent to being cast out of the ancient hunter-gatherer tribe and left to starve in the wilderness. That is exactly why modern anxiety feels so physically intense and so logically convincing.
It's basically an overactive, faulty smoke detector. I compare living with chronic modern anxiety to having a smoke detector in your kitchen that goes off at maximum ear-piercing volume every single time you try to make a piece of toast.
That is so annoying just thinking about it.
Right. It's screaming, "Fire! Fire! The house is burning down, you're going to die," when all you are doing is browning some bread. Eventually, if you don't realize the machine is broken, you become so exhausted by the noise and the sheer terror of the false alarms that you just become afraid to ever use your kitchen at all.
You just stop trying.
You order takeout, you play it totally safe, you shrink the perimeter of your life. Fear completely convinces you the alarm is real, but the practice of letting go is the realization that the mechanism is just overly sensitive.
Exactly. And the practice of owning the shadow means you stop fighting the alarm and you stop believing its story. You acknowledge the physical reality of the alarm. You say, yes, my heart is pounding. I feel terrified right now.
But you don't feed it.
Right. You completely drop the mental story about why you are afraid, and you just drop your awareness into the raw physical sensation of the adrenaline coursing through your veins.
Think about a highly relatable scenario here in the U.S., like intense public speaking anxiety. Imagine a brilliant young tech founder at a major Silicon Valley pitch competition.
High stakes again.
They are standing backstage, about to step out in front of a panel of top-tier venture capitalists who hold the future of their company in their hands. The founder's heart is pounding out of their chest, their throat is bone dry, their hands are visibly shaking.
Classic fight or flight.
The fear is screaming at them, trying to protect them from the intense social rejection of stumbling over their words. If they fight the fear, if they stand there thinking, stop shaking, calm down, what is wrong with me? They're going to see I'm an imposter, I'm going to ruin this. They create a disastrous feedback loop of escalating panic.
It just gets worse and worse.
But if they lean into the physical sensation, if they use the surrender technique, and just say to themselves, okay, my heart is racing at 130 beats per minute. There's a massive amount of kinetic energy moving through my nervous system right now, and I am just going to let it flow without trying to stop it. The resistance instantly drops.
The story dissolves.
Yes. The mental story of catastrophic failure dissolves. The energy stops being paralyzing terror and actually transforms into sharp, hyper-focused excitement. They walk on stage and deliver a killer pitch, regaining their confidence simply by allowing the biological fear to exist without fighting it.
It is the ultimate shift from being a helpless victim of your own autonomic nervous system to being the conscious, grounded observer of it.
It is incredibly powerful to finally realize you don't have to be magically fearless. You just have to stop fighting the fear you have. Please like, subscribe, and share for more updates as we continue to the next chapter.
Now we cross a fascinating line where we leave the paralysis of fear and enter the frantic, restless, outward-looking energy of desire, craving, and attachment.
Well, this is the ultimate modern trap of endless wanting. Alex and Mia unpack this incredibly dangerous, pervasive mindset of, I'll be happy when.
We all do it.
I'll be happy when I finally get the VP promotion, when I find the absolutely perfect partner, when I make my first $1 million, when I lose exactly 10 pounds. It is a mindset that guarantees joy is kept permanently at arm's length.
Because the goalposts always move.
Right. The moment you achieve the goal, the ego immediately moves the goalpost to the next thing. They explain a paradox here that is incredibly hard for ambitious people to grasp at first. Releasing desperate wanting and practicing true non-attachment actually brings us the exact things we desire much faster and with much less effort.
It is a profound, almost mystical paradox until you break down the psychology of it. To understand why non-attachment works, we have to look closely at the energetic and psychological mechanics of craving.
What's happening underneath the craving?
When you desperately, urgently want something, you are broadcasting a very loud, continuous signal through your behavior, your micro-expressions, and your tone of voice. And that signal is not, I am successful or I am worthy. The underlying, undeniable signal of craving is lack. It is a constant, desperate broadcast of, I do not have this and I am incomplete without it. And because human psychology tends to mirror and respond to our dominant state, you just end up creating more situations of not having.
People can smell desperation.
Exactly. Furthermore, on a deeply instinctual level, desperation actively repels people. Whether in high-stakes business negotiations or in romance, human beings can subconsciously detect when you are trying to extract something from them to fill your own internal void. It feels unsafe to them.
So letting go shifts that.
Letting go shifts your internal state from lack to abundance. You still have the clear preference for the goal, you still want the promotion, but your fundamental happiness is no longer held hostage by the outcome.
It makes me picture a person running on a treadmill with a delicious donut tied to a stick that is strapped directly to their own head.
That's hilarious.
The prize is dangling right in front of their face. They are running as fast as they physically can, exhausting themselves, sweating profusely, desperately trying to lunge forward and grab it. But because the stick is attached to them, the donut keeps moving away at the exact speed they're running.
You can never catch it.
They exhaust themselves completely, but never actually get the reward. The I'll be happy when mindset is that exact treadmill. Surrendering the craving doesn't mean you decide you hate donuts. It is just the realization that you can step off the exhausting machine, walk calmly out the front door, and just go to a bakery.
Precisely. You stop trying to forcefully extract the outcome from the universe, and instead, you create the conditions for it to arrive naturally.
Let's look at the grueling hustle culture we see dominating places like New York City, or even the exhausting swipe-heavy cycle of modern dating apps anywhere in the country.
Those are perfect examples of the treadmill.
Right. Imagine a mid-level professional in Manhattan working brutal 80-hour weeks, aggressively and desperately trying to force a promotion because they deeply believe that new executive title will finally make them feel worthy and secure. Their daily energy is frantic, stressed, sharp, and needy.
And everyone around them feels it.
Their colleagues can feel the edge, their boss can feel the desperation. It actually makes them less effective leaders because they are acting out of survival instinct. Or consider someone on a dating app going on 5 dates a week, desperate to lock down a partner before they turn 30, overanalyzing every single text message for clues.
It pushes people away.
Exactly. That heavy desperation actively pushes the desired outcome away. The potential partner goes on a date, feels the suffocating weight of those expectations, and ghosts them. But If that professional or that dater drops the desperation, if they use the letting go technique to deeply surrender the agonizing craving for the outcome, their entire nervous system relaxes.
They become themselves again.
Their natural, authentic personality emerges. They become calm, grounded, and magnetic rather than repellent. And suddenly, dropping that desperation creates natural, unforced opportunities. The promotion comes to the professional because they are suddenly leading with calm, assured competence, not frantic need. The relationship clicks on the dating app because there is finally emotional space for two whole people to connect, rather than one person desperately trying to use the other to fill a psychological hole.
That subtle internal shift from aggressive grasping to confident allowing is the absolute essence of true magnetism in any field.
It completely revolutionizes the entire dynamic of how we pursue our life goals. Please like, subscribe, and share for more updates as we continue to the next chapter.
Moving upward on the scale, we step from the simmering frustration of unmet desires into a highly combustible, volatile, but very powerful state. Anger.
This is a crucial pivot point,
Yeah.
where we learn how to transform anger into actual power. Alex and Mia spend a lot of time differentiating between healthy, constructive anger and destructive, chronic resentment.
There's a big difference.
They discuss how suppressed rage, when we swallow our anger because we want to be perceived as polite or because we are terrified of conflict, doesn't just politely vanish into the ether, it leaks out.
Always.
It turns into toxic passive aggression, or it eats us alive from the inside, causing severe physical burnout, high blood pressure, and adrenal fatigue. The ultimate goal here is to use the raw energy of anger as fuel for positive change, rather than letting the emotion blindly control you. But, I have to stop you here.
Okay.
I have a major pushback, and I know for a fact a lot of our listeners will be thinking the exact same thing right now.
Let's hear it.
My immediate instinct is that anger is entirely necessary to fight injustice. If we see something terribly wrong in the world, or if a colleague is actively mistreating us or stealing our credit, and we just let it go and surrender the anger, don't we just become passive, weak doormats? Doesn't the world actually need our righteous anger to enact change?
It is the single most common and arguably the most valid concern people have about the letting go process. If surrender means becoming a doormat, no one should do it.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
But here's the brilliant, nuanced clarification the sources provide. Letting go of the emotion of anger does not mean accepting the action of injustice. It doesn't mean rolling over. It means freeing yourself from the blinding, chaotic, physiologically reactive emotion so that you can take highly effective, strategic, clear-headed action.
Oh, so you still act, just not blindly.
Exactly. Anger is an incredibly powerful ignition switch. It is vastly superior to apathy. It wakes you up. It alerts you. It says, a boundary has been crossed. This situation is unacceptable. This must change.
So it's good for starting the engine.
Yes. But while anger makes a great ignition switch, it makes a terrible steering wheel. When you act directly from a state of blind, sympathetic nervous system rage, you make critical mistakes. You lose your temper, you alienate your allies, you act impulsively, and you usually end up sabotaging your own cause.
That makes total sense. So how do we steer?
By surrendering the raw physiological charge of the anger, feeling the heat in your body and letting it pass. You maintain the absolute clarity of the boundary, but you regain access to your prefrontal cortex. You regain your higher intelligence. You fight the injustice with cold strategy, sharp focus, and unshakable resolve, rather than chaotic, easily dismissed reactivity.
So the anger wakes you up to the fire, but you shouldn't let the fire drive the fire truck.
That's a great way to put it.
Let's look at exactly how suppressed anger plays out destructively in a modern workplace. Imagine a high-tech startup environment in Seattle. They're pushing towards a major make-or-break product launch, and the entire team is in crunch time.
It gets really intense.
The software developers are working grueling 70-hour weeks, working through the weekends, literally sleeping under their desks to meet an arbitrary deadline set by investors. Internally, they are absolutely furious about the unrealistic expectations and the total lack of respect for their personal lives and health.
Rightfully so.
But because the company culture heavily praises being a quote-unquote team player and punishes dissent, they suppress the anger. They don't speak up clearly to management. Instead, that suppressed boiling rage leaks out sideways. It turns into toxic, snarky, passive-aggressive comments on the company Slack channels. It turns into deliberate, quiet non-compliance on small, critical tasks. They start hoarding information.
The culture just turns toxic.
Ultimately, it leads to massive systemic burnout and key engineers abruptly quitting without warning right before the launch. If, instead, those developers allowed themselves to feel the anger, process the raw physiological charge of it, and channel that intense energy into clear, firm communication, the outcome would be different.
They could actually fix the problem.
Yes, they could walk into the engineering manager's office and firmly, calmly, and strategically negotiate better boundaries, push back the deadline, or demand additional resources without screaming or being labeled as difficult.
Exactly. The passive aggression and the sudden resignations are symptoms of unreleased, unmanaged anger. When the anger is processed somatically, the ensuing communication becomes incredibly clean. It is powerful, direct, and completely unclouded by emotional volatility.
People listen to that kind of communication.
They respect it. That is how the raw material of anger transforms into genuine, effective power.
It's the profound difference between just exploding and actually utilizing the energy. Please like, subscribe, and share for more updates as we continue to the next chapter.
This brings us up into tricky, nuanced territory, which explores what the guides call the double-edged sword of pride. This is a very complex state because it is the highest of the negative or heavy emotions on the map of consciousness.
It is so tricky because, unlike apathy, grief, or fear, pride actually feels pretty good.
It does. It feels great.
At least momentarily. When you feel proud, you get a hit of dopamine. You feel accomplished, superior, and righteous. But Alex and Mia deeply analyze why pride, despite feeling good, serves as a massive, impenetrable block to any deeper emotional or spiritual growth.
It really is a trap.
They talk about the exhausting nature of defensiveness, the compulsive ego-driven need to always be right, and even the very sneaky trap of the spiritual ego, where you start secretly thinking you are better or more evolved than everyone else simply because you meditate more, go to therapy, or read insightful books like the one we're discussing today.
Pride is essentially a psychological plateau. Because it feels so much better than the agony of anger or the terror of fear, people arrive at the state of pride and mistakenly think they have reached the ultimate finish line of human development.
Like, I made it. I'm the best.
Exactly. But the energy of pride is inherently fragile and exhausting because it relies entirely on external conditions and comparisons. To feel superior, there must constantly be someone inferior to compare yourself to. To feel right, you must constantly prove someone else wrong.
You're always on defense.
Therefore, the proud ego is constantly on high alert, defending its territory against any perceived slight. It creates an incredible, brittle rigidity in the personality. Moving from the rigid state of pride to genuine, grounded confidence is actually terrifying for the ego because it requires the one thing pride hates more than anything else: vulnerability.
Vulnerability is terrifying for the ego.
It requires the willingness to drop the mask and say, I actually don't know the answer, or I made a significant mistake, or your idea is actually much better than mine. Genuine, quiet confidence has nothing to prove and therefore doesn't need to constantly defend itself.
I think of pride like choosing to wear a massive, intricate, incredibly heavy suit of polished golden armor.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
It looks absolutely impressive to everyone else. It shines brilliantly in the sun, it projects status, and people are appropriately intimidated by it. But inside that armor, the reality is that it is suffocating. It is incredibly heavy to carry around all day. You can't move freely, you can't run, and most importantly, you cannot actually hug anyone or feel any genuine skin-to-skin human connection while wearing it.
You're untouchable, but you're alone.
Exactly. You're perfectly safe from attack, but you are completely miserably isolated in your beautiful golden shell. Dropping pride is like finally unclasping and taking that heavy armor off. It is terrifying to stand there in the open without the protection you were used to, but it is the only possible way to actually breathe deeply and move freely in the world.
That is a very accurate representation of the psychological defense mechanisms at play. The armor keeps the pain of the world out, but it simultaneously blocks all new ideas, growth, and real human connection from getting in.
We see this dynamic play out all the time with highly educated, high-performing executives. Let's look at the elite medical or academic hubs in a city like Boston.
Very high-pride environments.
You have these brilliant, highly decorated professionals, renowned chiefs of surgery, tenured university deans, people who have spent decades sacrificing to build their expertise. The pride in their accomplishments is completely natural and earned. But when that pride solidifies and morphs into the chronic smartest person in the room syndrome, it becomes a massive liability.
It stops them from learning.
Imagine a senior executive who is so deeply personally invested in always being right, that when a junior staff member suggests a highly innovative, disruptive new process during a strategy meeting, the executive instantly, reflexively shuts it down. Their pride blinds them to the data.
They feel threatened.
Their defensiveness
Yeah.
perceives the new idea not as a brilliant opportunity for the institution, but as a direct personal threat to their established authority. Ultimately, that golden armor of pride stalls their own company's growth. Eventually, they are outpaced by competitors. They stop innovating entirely because they simply cannot admit there is a better way that they didn't think of first.
It is the classic, tragic downfall of many great organizations and leaders. The leadership becomes utterly paralyzed by their own unyielding pride. Letting go of the egoic need to be right and embracing the vulnerability of being a lifelong student is the gateway to real mastery.
It's an incredibly humbling step, but an absolutely necessary one. Please like, subscribe, and share for more updates as we continue to the next chapter.
Now we cross a major, life-altering threshold on the map. The next phase marks the definitive turning point where courage awakens.
This is where the entire mood and trajectory of the inner journey shifts significantly upward. We are officially crossing out of the negative, draining, contractive emotional territory and moving into the upward momentum of positive, expansive energy.
It's a huge shift.
The source text celebrates this moment as a profound awakening, explaining how true willingness and courage begin to naturally dominate the personality once the heavy, exhausting armor of pride is finally surrendered. They explain the absolute life-changing power of taking total responsibility for every aspect of your life. But they make a microscopic, crucial distinction, taking complete responsibility without falling backward into the toxic trap of self-blame.
This is arguably the most major pivot point on the entire map of consciousness. If you look at every single emotion below courage, pride, anger, fear, grief, apathy, they all share one core psychological feature:
What's that?
a victim mentality. Whether it's the helpless victim of apathy, the terrified victim of fear, or the angry victim fighting a hostile world, the locus of control is always external. The fundamental belief is, the world is doing this to me and I am at its mercy.
So courage changes that.
Courage is the exact defining moment. The locus of control shifts internally. You stop blaming the outside world and you realize, I am the primary creator of my experience and I have the capacity to handle whatever happens.
So what does this all mean in terms of how it actually feels in the body? I think it's like finally breaking the surface of the water after swimming upward from the deep, dark ocean for really a long time.
Oh, I can feel that.
When you are underwater, in those lower emotions, you are constantly fighting gravity. You are holding your breath, your lungs are burning, and everything is a desperate, exhausting struggle against the elements just to survive. Courage is that exact moment. Your head finally breaks the surface.
You can breathe.
You can finally take a full, deep, expanding breath of fresh air. The environment is no longer crushing you from all sides. The desperate fight against the heavy pressure is over, and now, instead of just trying not to drown, you can actually just swim forward toward a destination.
Exactly. And the psychological distinction between blame and responsibility is the key to keeping your head above the water. Blame is a heavy, past-focused, contractive emotion. When you fail, blame says, I am fundamentally a bad, broken person because I made this catastrophic mistake.
Which just pulls you back down.
That thought instantly drops you right back down to the heavy frequency of guilt and shame. Responsibility, however, is a highly empowered, present-focused, objective state. It simply says, I made specific choices based on the information I had, and those choices led to this negative outcome. Therefore, because I am the one who made the choices, I have the absolute power to make new, different choices right now that will lead me somewhere better.
So it's about ownership.
Courage is not the magical absence of fear or challenges. It is the fundamental, unbroken willingness to face reality exactly as it is, without playing the victim. It is the necessary gateway to all higher-level transformations.
Let's illustrate this highly empowered state with a story of resilience. Let's look at a driven small business owner in a booming, highly competitive market like Austin, Texas.
A tough place to do business.
Let's say this entrepreneur sinks a massive amount of their personal capital into a risky investment. Maybe a new product line that totally flops, or opening a second retail location right before an economic downturn that hemorrhages money. They lose almost everything they spent 10 years building.
Devastating.
If they drop below the line of courage, they fall immediately into blame. They blame the economy, they blame their vendor, they blame the government. Or worse, they fall into guilt and deeply blame themselves, wallowing in the crushing feeling of being an inherent failure. That victimhood keeps them entirely stuck and bitter.
They can't move forward from there.
But if they tap into the energy of courage, they take absolute radical responsibility. They look at the wreckage and say, I authorized that investment. I missed the clear market signals because I was too eager. I own that completely. By owning the failure objectively, without adding the emotional self-flagellation of shame, they can extract the pure, valuable data from the failure.
The lesson.
Exactly. They use that sharp, hard-earned market knowledge to pivot the business model, confidently secure new funding because investors respect their accountability, and eventually build a far more robust, successful venture. The sheer courage to look a painful reality in the face without blinking or blaming is what ultimately saves them.
Courage allows you to metabolize failure into pure wisdom, rather than letting the failure permanently define your identity.
It is the ultimate momentum builder in life. Please like, subscribe, and share for more updates as we continue to the next chapter.
As we continue the upward ascent, the guide brings us into the profoundly peaceful, spacious state of full acceptance.
This is such a beautiful, liberating concept, but it is deeply misunderstood. The focus here is on acceptance and emotional neutrality. Alex and Mia explain how the simple act of stopping the internal fight with reality brings instant, tangible, physiological relief to the nervous system.
Instant relief.
They discuss the deep mechanics of true forgiveness, the incredible power of living completely in the present moment rather than the past or future, and what it really means to meet life exactly on life's terms, rather than exhausting yourself demanding that life conform to your specific expectations.
The expert nuance here, and this is drawn from frameworks similar to acceptance and commitment therapy, is strictly distinguishing true acceptance from mere resignation, because people confuse them constantly and they feel entirely different in the body.
Resignation versus acceptance, what's the difference?
Resignation is a heavy, defeated state, energetically very close to apathy. Resignation says, I hate the situation, it is objectively awful, but I am entirely powerless to change it, so I guess I will just suffer through it miserably. There is still massive, grinding internal resistance in resignation.
You're still mad about it.
True acceptance is entirely different. Acceptance is clear, bright, open, and emotionally neutral. Acceptance says, this specific situation is exactly what is happening right now. I don't have to love it. I don't have to agree with it, but I absolutely will not waste 1 ounce of my precious life energy arguing with the fact that it currently exists. Since this is the undeniable reality of the moment, what is my most effective next right step?
I picture the state of resistance as trying to physically push a raging, freezing river back upstream. You are standing in the middle of Class V rapids, violently pushing against the rushing water with all your might. You are exhausted, freezing cold, taking on water, and getting absolutely nowhere because you cannot defeat the river.
It's impossible.
Resignation is just giving up, going limp, and letting the river violently bash you against the rocks as you drown. But true acceptance is finally turning around, floating on your back, and letting the current carry you. You aren't fighting the water anymore. You are using the natural flow of reality to navigate, rather than fighting the indisputable fact that the water is moving downstream. You can easily steer around the rocks and obstacles because all your physical energy isn't tied up in the futile effort of fighting the current itself.
That is exactly the energetic and neurological shift that occurs. When you finally accept reality, all the cognitive bandwidth and biological energy you were using to fight it instantly returns to you. You suddenly have immense creative problem-solving power available because your prefrontal cortex is back online.
Let's ground this in a major, highly stressful life disruption. Use the example of an unexpected, sudden, cross-country job relocation. Say you have a family perfectly, happily settled in a cozy town in New England. They love the crisp autumn seasons, the historic architecture, their tight-knit community.
And they're comfortable.
Suddenly, the parent's company forces a mandatory transfer to the scorching, sprawling desert heat of Phoenix, Arizona. If they spend the first entire year fighting the reality of the move, bitterly complaining about the 110-degree heat every single day, comparing every local restaurant unfavorably to the ones back home, resenting the rocky landscape for not having soft green grass, they cause themselves daily, acute psychological misery.
They're fighting the river.
The internal resistance is the actual source of their suffering, not the desert itself. But if they practice full radical acceptance, they drop the argument. They look around and say, we are living in Phoenix now. It is incredibly hot. This is our current reality. Instantly, the heavy misery lifts.
The resistance is gone.
With clear, undefended minds, that acceptance opens them up to discovering the unique, hidden beauty of their new environment. They start hiking the breathtaking desert trails at sunrise. They learn to appreciate the massive painted sunsets. They find a new, slower rhythm of life. The external geographic location didn't change one bit. Their internal relationship to it did.
Exactly. By not demanding that the desert behave like a forest, they are finally able to actually enjoy the desert for what it is. That is the immense piece of full acceptance.
It really is the ultimate psychological life hack for navigating change. Please like, subscribe, and share for more updates as we continue to the next chapter.
Finally, we reach the summit of the map. The final section explores love, peace, and embodied freedom.
This is the powerful finale of the journey. This is where we explore the absolute highest states on the map, the pinnacle of human consciousness and potential. Alex and Mia share their final, profound insights on how unconditional love, profound joy, and unshakable peace are not things you have to desperately hunt for.
They're already there.
They emerge completely naturally, on their own, once all the heavy lower emotions we've discussed today are systematically surrendered and released. They also explore the long-term integration of this process, including the surprising, documented physical healing benefits of inner freedom and what living an embodied, free life actually looks like day to day.
It's quite a vision.
But I have a very practical, grounded question about this pinnacle state, because it can sound a bit utopian. Does reaching a baseline state of peace mean you are basically a detached Zen monk who never gets annoyed by everyday inconveniences ever again? Does someone cut you off in traffic and you just peacefully send them pure light and love? Or does it just mean you bounce back faster?
It is a great question, and it is vital to demystify these higher states. Inner freedom does not eliminate the basic human biological experience. It fundamentally radically changes your relationship to it.
So you still feel things.
Yes, the lower heavy emotions don't permanently magically vanish forever. You are still living inside a human nervous system designed for survival, but they no longer rule or define your life. They become brief, passing ripples on a deep pond rather than massive tidal waves that drown you.
Right. So about the traffic.
If someone cuts you off in traffic, you might still feel a momentary flash of biological adrenaline because that is your startle response.
Yeah.
But because your baseline is peace, you don't grab onto the anger. You don't spin a resentful story about how everyone in the city is an idiot.
You just let it pass.
The feeling passes through your nervous system in seconds, and you effortlessly return to equilibrium. The peace described here is not a fragile, forced positivity or spiritual bypassing. It is a deep, unshakable, spacious capacity that holds whatever happens in life with grace.
And what about the physical healing?
The physical healing benefits the guides mention are very real and backed by science. When you aren't chronically pumping your body full of corrosive cortisol and adrenaline from resisting life, the physical body's parasympathetic nervous system engages, naturally repairing and regenerating tissues, lowering inflammation, and boosting immune function.
Let's picture what this actually looks like in everyday, ordinary life. Think of a retired nurse living in a quiet suburb in Ohio. For 40 years, she carried the incredibly heavy, traumatic stress of working in the modern healthcare system.
Such a hard job.
The deep grief of losing patients, the daily anger at broken bureaucracy, the underlying fear of making a fatal mistake. For decades, that stress lived physically in her tight shoulders, in her guarded posture, in her exhausted face. But over the later years of her career, through this dedicated practice of letting go, she systematically surrendered all of that accumulated heavy baggage.
She let the beach balls up.
She processed it completely out of her nervous system. Now, in retirement, she finds profound, deep daily joy in something as simple as tending her community garden. She isn't forcing herself to be happy or reciting empty affirmations. She naturally radiates a contagious, grounded, quiet peace.
Because the resistance is gone.
Her physical vitality and energy levels are actually higher than they were when she was in her 40s, because the massive energetic drain of chronic resistance is finally gone. When her neighbors talk to her, they feel their own nervous systems calm down just by being in her presence. That is what embodied freedom looks like. It's not about achieving some detached, mystical trance on a mountaintop. It's about being fully, vibrantly alive in the present moment, completely unburdened by the ghosts of the past.
It is the ultimate, beautiful realization that the profound peace we are all frantically searching for out in the external world was patiently waiting underneath our own internal resistance the entire time.
That is exactly it. Please like, subscribe, and share for more updates as we continue to the next chapter.
As we synthesize everything we have explored today from this incredible framework, the overarching theme is undeniable and empowering. The journey from suffering to true freedom is entirely an inside job.
It's all inside.
It is not about manipulating the external world. It is not about controlling other people's behavior. And it is certainly not about acquiring enough wealth or status to insulate yourself from pain. It is a continuous, gentle, lifelong practice of observing your own internal resistance and choosing moment by moment to drop the heavy emotional baggage you were never meant to carry.
Like taking off the armor.
It is the realization that your true nature is already light, and you just have to let go of the clouds obscuring the sun.
We have spent all this time today talking deeply about what happens when you let go of your negative, painful emotions. The apathy, the gripping fear, the blinding anger. We see clearly how much lighter and more effective life becomes when we drop the resistance.
It makes a world of difference.
But as we sign off, we want to leave you with a slightly different, perhaps more challenging angle to ponder. A final, provocative thought to take with you as you experiment with this practice on your own inner freedom journey.
I love this part.
We know we need to let go of the bad. But what would happen if you actively surrendered your deep attachment to your most cherished positive labels? The identity of being the hard worker, the smart one in the room, the fixer of everyone's problems, the reliable one.
That's tough because we like those labels.
So much of our ego and identity is tightly wrapped up in these good things we desperately cling to for validation. But who are you, really, beneath the good labels you defend?
That is a profound question to sit with.
Thank you for diving into this material with us. Practice observing your own resistance today. When you feel that tension rise, see if you can just notice it. Drop the story and let it go. Keep an eye on your inner thermostat.